Hey, we welcome you to our regular Thursday morning broadcast here with Charlie Fuquay, the king of controversy. And Charlie always gets a big grin on his face when I say that. He likes that. So we thank you for listening to 88.1 FM, KBAP, the very best in modern praise and worship. And before we get started, I just want to remind everyone we do have an audio stream. The stream's on the internet. And I recently had a snafu with the getting that working. But anyway, it's back. It's working again. And you can go to www.kbapfm.org to listen into the radio station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And when we pre-record this program, it will also be on there. So actually today we're pre-recording. So if you're listening on the internet already, you're way ahead of the game. Charlie,
and actually, it's really clear on the internet.
Yeah, the audio stream's excellent. It sounds really good, and we've got a real good provider that helps us with that. And we just want to give a quick shout out to all our sponsors. A lot of different businesses in town like to help out the station. And if you're a business owner or individual who wants to help, just give me a call. Give the station a call at 501-203-6953 and leave a message. I'll get an email. And I'll call you right back. Well, I shouldn't say right back. I'll call you as soon as I check my email, which can be up to a day or two. So, we appreciate everybody's help, and we can't really run the radio station without the support of people. And I'm just so thankful that the community here is a lot of Christian folks that appreciate our local Christian radio station.
Okay, I want to start out. My first thing I want to mention is about Franklin Graham.
Okay.
And I talk about Franklin Graham a lot. And I'm going to admit something that maybe a lot of people won't like to hear, but I was never a big fan of Billy Graham. I don't know why, I wasn't a Billy Graham fan. But I'm a really big fan of his son, Franklin Graham.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not afraid of what he says.
Yeah, Franklin seems to be more politically involved, or more, where I guess Billy Graham was more the pure Christian evangelist, and that was his focus. And civil rights issues, political issues weren't really on the forefront of his agenda so much. And in his defense, being a polarizing individual can cost you.
Yeah,
it can cost you a soul. So I don't know. Maybe that was his.
Well, I've kind of been a polarizing individual all my life, and it's cost me lots of times. It cost me a lot. And so I know what you're talking about.
And that's to me, I was talking with some brothers yesterday up in Missouri about that concept. Like, a lot of our Christian leaders today are like warm and squishy. You know what I mean? They're like warm and squishy people, and you get around them and you just feel so warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
And I like that too. I'm a human being. I like warm and fuzzy, but I think when you really analyze the statements of Jesus in the New Testament, there are multiple times when he is anything but warm and squishy.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And so if he is our master and he's our leader, I think there should be something of his character that's imputed and imparted into his people, his followers. And I don't know. Like I said, I think there's wisdom in not being polarizing for the wrong reasons. Like you can pick your battles and alienate people over things that really don't matter. That's not very wise.
No, it's not.
But then there are other things that really do matter, and you should really draw a line in the sand and standing on the Word of God and saying, hey, this is what the Word of God says about this subject. And now you did that, Charlie, with your book, and the Huffington Post.
And a whole lot of other people just attacked me like crazy.
Yeah. Now
and took things out of context and twisted them into what they were never intended to be.
And now you guys even received some death threats.
Oh
yeah, right?
Yeah. It was. The only way I could describe it was demonic attack.
Yeah.
And I mean, my book is on Amazon, and the reviews of Amazon were just horrible because they didn't want anybody to read my book.
So people got on there and really
really trashed my book and trashed me and
that's what you get for being a fundamentalist.
Yeah, it is. It is. Jesus said if they speak well of you, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I think it says something like, woe unto you when all men speak well of you. For this is how they spoke about the false prophets.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the acid test, but unfortunately, you want the wrong people to speak wrong of you and the right people to
Yeah.
speak well of you. You know what I mean? Like you can reverse that and say, well, I'm fulfilling that scripture.
Yeah.
I've got some people that are speaking not well of me.
Yeah.
But those are the people that you want,
Yeah.
because you could be like a kind of a lukewarm kind of person, kind of a mamby-pamby.
And everybody will speak well of you.
except for the fundamentalists.
Yeah.
They'll call you out.
Yeah.
Oh, see, look, I'm being persecuted.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I want to get this one thing, and I'm going to talk about something Franklin Graham said, and as usual, I agree with Franklin Graham. I don't know that I've ever heard him say anything I don't agree with. But before I do that, I want to talk about something else that I think is really important. You know, in the Mideast, Christians are undergoing horrific persecution. I don't know how to, I mean, they're being tortured to death. Horrible, horrible things are happening. And Franklin Graham operates this organization. I think the name of it is Shepherd's Purse. Samaritan's Purse.
Yeah.
Purse. And there's another organization that I want to put a plug in for, and that's, oh gosh, I'm having a senior moment.
We can go.
William Wurmbrandt's organization.
That's the Martyrs.
Voice of the Martyrs. Voice of the Martyrs. And there's other organizations, okay, that are trying to get relief to persecuted Christians in the Mideast. And I would just encourage people to think about and pray about whether you should be sending some relief to Christians in the Mideast. I mean, they are suffering horrible, horrible persecution. And just to give you one example is one ISIS fighter tweeted, "Hey, I'm a full-fledged ISIS fighter now because I have buried my first Christian infant alive."
Oh gosh.
You know, and
Sick.
it is, and some of it's far worse than that. I mean, it is horrible what is happening to Christians. They are being exterminated. And that's the only way to put it. But anyway, that's what brought this to mind. So think about sending some support to some of those organizations that are providing relief and comfort to those Christians in the Mideast. Okay, also what I want to talk about, what Franklin Graham brought to mind was he is criticizing the Anglican Church for their act of embracing gay marriage. And, you know, the Anglican Church in England is actually reprimanding what's really the Episcopal Church in the United States. So that's ironic to me, you know, that the Anglican Church in England, now for many years the African Episcopal Church has chastised the Episcopalians because the African Episcopalian Church is really hardcore. I mean, they're Christians.
Yeah, they believe the Bible.
Yeah, they believe the Bible. And it appears that even the British Episcopalians or Anglicans or whatever you want to call them are far more conservative than the American Episcopalians. Because in an American Episcopalian church, I guess anything goes. They have lesbian priests and all kinds of things. And Franklin Graham is telling them, you know, you need to get back to following the Bible. And I love to hear a man of God, and I think he's a man of God, calling people back to God. And that's what Franklin Graham does over and over again.
You know, too, what I'm really looking for people to come back to God would be this, what do you call it, like a renewal, reformation, revival, and there are a lot of people praying, and I was talking to a dear mentor of mine, and he was telling me that his take on it is it's really like it's a timing issue with the Lord. You know, it's just one of these things that, like, the windows of heaven can open, and just people start getting saved, healed, delivered, set free. The church gets activated, catches on fire, people start sharing their faith, they get passionate about Jesus, and there's a wave or a sweeping move of revival that goes across the land, and the conscience of people is changed. You know, the intellect, the mindset of people nationwide would be changed, which would be great. You know, it seems to me that things have been going the wrong direction very slowly.
Yeah.
You know, there's been this kind of the frog in the pot analogy. You know, the heat keeps getting turned up, and it's just like, oh, well, this is just how it is. Oh, well, this is just normal. But as time goes on...
Well, you know, what I see happening in Europe and the United States, and let's face it, the heart and soul of Christianity have been Europe and the United States in the past. And what has happened, who have been the most prosperous and blessed people in the world? It's been Europe and the United States, right? But it's the same cycle that you see throughout the Old Testament. Israel would turn to God and they'd do what they were supposed to do, and they'd get blessed and be prosperous, and then they'd say, well, you know, we did this on our own.
Yeah,
we don't need God. And it's just an endless, you know, to us, how can I put this? It seems like we look at things in such a short time frame.
Yeah.
You know, because like to us, well, 100 years is a lifetime.
Right.
But the Bible records thousands of years, and this cycle goes on and on and on. And it, you know, there's nothing new under the sun. When people get prosperous, they turn their backs on God. It's what always seems to happen.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been really looking at lately is this economic cycles.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking with the guy the other day, and he was talking about the Shemitah year. And for those of our listeners that haven't read any of Jonathan Cahn's work or know from the Bible what the Shemitah year is, it's basically a sabbatical year. And God instructed the Israelite people every 7th year to let the land lay fallow, not to farm the land, to let the land rest. And so in true fashion, as usual, Israel, what they would do is they would disobey God, because it was designed by God to be something to give them rest, to give them a year off from working. I mean, that sounds pretty good, really.
Yeah, let me tell you another thing I think it was designed to do. It was to make them always be a planning, looking forward people. Because if you're going to take a year off, you've got to plan for that. You've got to prepare for that.
Yeah, I agree.
And a planning, preparing people does a whole lot better than a people that don't plan and prepare.
Fly by the seat of their pants. Yeah, I tend to do that every now and then.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. The tithe does that. You know, if you know you have to live on 90% of your income, the tithe forces you to budget your money and plan your money. These sabbatical deals, you know, okay, 1 day a week. You can't do this, you can't do that. You got to plan. You got to prepare your meals ahead of time. You got to do this. So all this kind of stuff was in play. But when it came to the sabbatical year, they disobeyed the Lord. But before, when He gave them the law or the rules about this sabbatical year, He said, "Now I'm going to give you enough food in the 5th and 6th year to have enough food for the entire 7th year, and it's something that's to be a blessing for you. Now, if you don't do this, I will raise up a foreign nation that will come in and take you away into captivity, and the land will rest while you're in captivity." I mean, it couldn't be
any clearer.
Yeah, I mean, it was totally spelled out by the Lord.
But that didn't happen, did it?
Well,
yes, it did. Didn't
you're
it?
talking about these time frames. You know, it's 490 years of disobedience.
Yeah.
You know, the Israelites for 490 years disobeyed this sabbatical year idea, this concept, this regulation from
But
God.
God was merciful. He just, you know.
He extended mercy for almost 500 years until finally, you know, God's not a liar. If He says He's going to do something, good or bad, He will do it.
Yeah.
So here come the Babylonians. They get swept away into Babylonian captivity. So they've disobeyed the law for 490 years. So if you're a math whiz, you know, that's 70 different years that they disobeyed the Shemitah year. 70 Shemitahs they violated. So they go into Babylonian captivity, and they're in Babylonian captivity for exactly 70 years to the exact day.
Yeah.
When Darius writes the decree to send them back, okay, you can go back, and I don't know what happened first. I don't remember.
Well, they were allowed to rebuild the walls
Yeah,
first.
Nehemiah did the wall, and Ezra does the temple and all that. So I guess my point is there's something very significant in the Old Testament about this that God takes very seriously. So give me just a second here. I'm going to pull up my Jewish calendar and I'm going to look at when the Shemitah year ends and all that. Okay, so tomorrow.
Now you're assuming Jonathan Kahn's got his calendar right.
Yeah, well, I'm actually going.
And I guess I'm not convinced of that.
Yeah, and that's okay. I'm actually going off of a calendar called HeebCal.
Okay.
It's a Hebrew calendar. It's HeebCal.com. It synchronizes with Google Calendar, which I also use to kind of plan out my days. And today is February 11th, if it's Thursday, and it's the 2nd of Adar, and it's the year 5776 on the Jewish calendar. And so if you fast forward, let's go to September. Let's look around the third week in September. Let's see where we're at here. The 11th of Elul. Okay, let's go to the next week. The 18th through the 24th of September. That's still too early. It's going to be the end of. Actually got a point here. Okay, it's going to be October. It looks like the first week in October is going to be the very end of the Jubilee year.
Oh, it's not just the Shemitah
Yeah.
year; it's the Jubilee.
Yeah, right.
So it's 7 Sabbaths, and well, actually, it's 7 Sabbaths,
This is
and
the
then the
50th.
50th.
Right.
Because 7 times 7 is 49.
Right. Plus 1 is 50. So the 29th of Elul, which is the last day of the year of Jubilee, is Sunday, October 2nd, 2016.
Okay.
Okay, and so then Monday the 3rd of October is the beginning of the next Jewish year. It's was it Rosh Hashanah, I think, when they blow the trumpets and they eat the apples with the honey, for the sweetness of the new year. Okay, so here's my point. My point is that what was the purpose of the year Jubilee? And it was
the release of all debt.
Yeah, it was a financial restructuring. There was a debt cancellation. So if you were in debt, when the year Jubilee came around, you were out of debt.
It was something to be jubilant about.
Yes, exactly. What it did is it kept your fellow man from subjugating you for generations. It would break that generational cycle of subjugation. Say, okay, you've got a fresh start. Here's all your land back. Here's all your stuff back. Go. Can you make it this time? You got another 50 years to make a living, agriculturally off the land. So what some people are saying is that these cycles, you can observe these things that repeat. Financial markets tend to collapse and crash around
About every 50 years, don't
sevens and 50s.
Yeah.
So
and 50s are big ones.
So one of the things that is in the news right now that has to do with world economies is this thing called the Baltic Dry Index. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to read a little blip here from Wikipedia. And let me pull that up. The Baltic Dry Index is an economic indicator issued daily by the London-based Baltic Exchange, not restricted to Baltic Sea countries. The index provides an assessment of the price of moving the major raw materials by sea, taking in 23 shipping routes measured on a time charter basis. The index covers all these different sizes of shipping ships that carry, and it's got names for each one of these that most people probably don't even know what that means. I know I don't. So they're carrying a range of commodities, including coal, iron ore, and grain. Now, here's the thing about this. The Baltic Dry Index is actually it measures the shipping values and the amount of cargo that's being traded or moved in various markets. And so what it is it's what people call, economists call a leading indicator. Mm-hmm. So,
because without raw materials, you don't make anything.
Yeah, it predicts future economic activity. So if you have thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of coal being shipped into your country, one would think we're getting ready, or to use my Arkansas English, we're fixing to burn a lot of coal. I almost said that. We're fixing to burn a lot of coal. We're getting ready to burn a lot of coal. Oh, hey, we're shipping in tons and tons of iron. Well, we're getting ready to make a bunch of cars. or we're getting ready to smelt iron for some other purpose. So what's interesting about this Baltic Dry Index is that as of today, which we're pre-recording, so it's the 10th, February 10th, the Baltic Dry Index is at 291, which is an all-time historic low. It has never been this low in the history of the index. And
which means that world economic activity is in a slowdown.
yes, and I would go so far as to say that materials aren't coming into America like they have been. Well, and what I think we'll see is down the road in the next 2 to 3 months, we may see shortages of various things in America, and it would coincide interestingly with this Jubilee year and this financial restructuring and all these kinds of things that are happening.
You know, that's all very interesting in a time when we have energy surplus, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we're in a period of energy surplus right now. That's what's driving prices down. But why do we have energy surplus? It's because economic activity is backed off.
That
right?
really could be why. It could be.
I think it is.
It could be that, or it could be a combination of that, and I always like to tell people the C in OPEC stands for cartel.
Yeah.
And if you're a cartel and you're a Saudi Arabian cartel and you want to crush your enemies economically, you put more oil out of the market.
And they are. We know they are.
Yeah, if they open up the
Yeah.
spigots and really start to let that flow, what happens to the frack? And I forgot the exact dollar per barrel amount where U.S. oil producers can make money, but I thought it was like in the $70 a barrel range. I'm okay with being wrong about that. But basically, when it goes down to $30 a barrel, you can't make money pulling oil out of the ground in the United States using the processes we use to get it. But over there, they can get it and still make money. It's easier to get. And two, you've got this Iranian issue coming online where we go over to Iran and we buddy up with the Iranians, and Russia's already buddied up with the Iranians. So what it does is, last time I checked, the Persians and the Arabs weren't exactly friends. And another component to that is in more recent history is the Sunnis and the Shias aren't really friends. So you've got this.
And really, Iran is the leading Shia nation.
Yeah.
And Saudi Arabia was probably the leading Sunni nation.
Yeah.
And so that's the clash you've got.
Yeah, but so the U.S. pivots away from Saudi Arabia a little bit.
Who we have been locked with
Yes.
for, 50 years?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to Henry Kissinger and Nixon and all that, the petrodollar status. But it seems clear to me that relationship's eroding. And we've moved toward Iran, and I think we may be, instead of saying it's going to be us and Saudi Arabia against Iran and Russia, we've decided let's just get over here a little bit. And so we've let go of the sanctions. We're going to spend billions and billions of dollars to the Iranians. And what are the Iranians going to do now that the sanctions are lifted? Well, they're going to pump oil. Now I don't know where Iran sits on the stage as how much oil they can produce. But I know if the price is low, they'll make a whole lot less money.
Sure.
So by the Saudis opening the spigots, it squeezes Russia, because Russia's entire government is run on oil.
Yeah.
And it squeezes.
Which makes Russia want to produce more too, because they need more to make ends meet.
Yeah. So it creates a greater supply again.
Yeah.
So which further drives the price down. So all these this stuff's very interesting to watch. But coupled with what you mentioned earlier, this economic slowdown, we really could be stepping into some very interesting.
Well, I've heard
possibly
people
very troubled
say
economic
that
times.
China's oil usage is way down because China has an economic slowdown. And where does China send all the things they manufacture? Well, they send a lot of them here, don't they?
Yeah.
Let me say something else about that. I've got a nephew that works for ConocoPhillips, and he lives in Oklahoma, which is kind of an oil-producing state.
Yeah.
And they're laying people off like crazy. And many of the As a matter of fact, my sister owns a building in a kind of a little oil community in Oklahoma, not a building, a business in a little oil community, and her business is way down because so many people are unemployed there, because everybody works in the oil fields. And the small wildcatters and all those people, they're just not doing anything. There's no demand for oil right now.
Another market that's struggling because of this Baltic Dry Index being at an all-time low is the railways. You know, we've got some friends that are in southeast Missouri that work for the railroad, and they're laying them off because there's nothing to ship around. You know, there's nothing. As a matter of fact, on the way here, I forgot where I was. I was driving, and I just looked and saw a train with shipping crates on it, and no locomotive. Just parked right there on the tracks.
Oh, really?
And I don't know, maybe that's just a normal thing, but I thought, I wonder what's up with that.
You know, it's interesting because we have a major rail line just what would be east of here. And just to name two cities along the line, Newport and Walnut Ridge. And I just rode along that rail line the other day with a guy who was a railroad engineer. And he said, he was telling me how much rail traffic is down on that line. It's a very busy line, over 50 trains a day in, you know, really busy times, but it's way down. Traffic is way down on that railroad.
Yeah. So, like, I'm not like a fearmonger guy, and I'm not sponsored or supported by, you know, tornado shelter people or water purification people or iodine tablet people or any of the typical sponsors that sponsor like folks who are talking about difficult times coming on America. But I want to just give our listeners a heads up to maybe consider the possibility of laying back some resources in case, you know, things got difficult. Some people don't have the means to do that. You know, they absolutely are maxed out. They live hand to mouth. They can't do it. But other people could, you know, buy an extra $20 worth of, you know, canned pinto beans or something, just in case things got tough.
Well, now, let's be realistic. If you want to get stuff cheap, you're not buying canned pinto beans. You're buying dried pinto beans.
Yeah, that's cheaper.
And you need to keep them somewhere where the mice can't get at them, like in a plastic bucket or something.
Right.
And the two cheapest things you can eat are dried pinto beans and rice.
And really, I've termed a phrase that a buddy of mine, he's a physician, he was getting a kick out of yesterday. I call it the peasant diet.
Yeah.
You know, I've decided to eat like a peasant, you know, because of my own personal understanding of which foods are best for the human body long term. Mm-hmm. And so I've decided to get most of my protein from vegetable sources. Well, beans are pretty rich in protein, and when you combine them with the amino acids found in some of the grains like rice, you really have a pretty good protein source. Mm-hmm. Now, it's not as absorbed quite as quickly as animal proteins are. But
that may not be a negative, though.
Yeah, but it doesn't have some of the long-term side effects that some researchers are talking about. So anyway, to load up on, basically I'm saying, to load up on rice and beans to me is really not a bad idea, even in good times, because I've got a friend, he's kind of struggled some financially, and I told him about this peasant diet. I was like, hey man, you know, money's tight, you can get by on rice and beans, you know. It's like $1. I mean, you can get like a quarter of a cup of dry rice, and I like canned beans because I can prepare them quicker. I don't have to wait for them to
They're sure a lot more expensive.
Yeah, it's like 78 cents a can, you know. So I'm like for 88 cents, 89 cents, you know, I got lunch.
Yeah.
And now I'm really splurged though, because I'll take an onion and I'll quarter an onion and I'll sprinkle some onion on it, and I'll actually get some minced garlic and put it in there with a little hot sauce and a little garlic salt. I'll even use a bouillon cube in my rice, you know, to give it kind of a chickeny flavor. It's really pretty good. I actually just had that for lunch. But
now you're back to the animal protein with that bouillon cube.
Is there animal protein?
Well, there's
bouillon cubes?
Animal fat anyway.
Is there?
Yeah.
I kind of figured it was mostly salt. I'll check
well,
out.
There's a lot of salt too, but you're going to get some animal protein and fat in a bouillon cube.
Yeah, I'll do a little. You know, I just don't.
That's not much.
I just won't eat like a 40-pound porterhouse steak like I used to. You know. So anyway, this economic issue, there's a lot of things, you know, I like it when things converge, things make sense, and there's all kinds of things, indicators that are telling me you need to prepare for lean times, possibly. And so another thing that I think is wise is to consider, you know, your financial assets. You know, there's this thing, a concept I think they call it a bank holiday,
Yeah.
where the banks can close and when they reopen, a percentage of your account is gone.
You know. That's happened in, what was it, Cyprus?
Yeah, yeah. And some people say it was a test to see how the citizenry of that area responded to that. And I think they got mad, but I don't know that they rioted and looted and killed people and really
Well,
went after the
from
bank.
what I understood, they put a lot of that money back and only took it from customers that had very large accounts.
Yeah.
And most of those customers in Cyprus that had very large accounts were rich Russians. And so the people of Cyprus said, yeah, you can go ahead and steal from the people, the rich Russians, and we're okay with that.
Yeah, we don't care about their money.
And the rich Russians were putting it in Cyprus because they didn't want the Russian government to get it.
Yeah, right. So, but anyhow, I just, I'm not afraid. I'm not like a doom and gloomer guy. I'm not, this guy. I'm not Chicken Little. This guy's falling. I just don't think that way. I don't live that way. But at the same time, I know things can change. All kinds of circumstances can change. I mean, look at what's happened in Syria. I mean, the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, those cities are just wiped out.
Yeah. I went up to a little town called Pocahontas the other night and spoke on the Federal Reserve System and how it creates money out of nothing and how we're all really in debt bondage to that system.
Yeah.
And people ask me questions, like, what do I do? This is, because you look at the debt that the United States is in, and if people really get a grip on where we are as a nation financially, it'll throw you into a panic when you first realize it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where these people were the other night. They said, hey, what do we do? And I told them to get some survival food, some storage food, and have some kind of commodity to use for barter. And I've been told that probably the best barter commodity available is .22 ammunition.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of people tell me that.
Well, think about that. I mean, how easy is it to get .22 ammunition? I mean, for a long time, you couldn't find it. You couldn't get it anywhere.
That's because everybody was sucking it up.
Yeah. Well, why though? The
Well,
market will tell you what's going on. People were afraid, and like you said, a .22 round. It's not the hottest round on the market, but it's cheap.
Yeah.
You kill a lot of things: birds, rabbits, raccoons, deer. I mean, it's not legal to kill deer.
Yeah, but you can kill a deer with a .22.
Yeah, but if everyone's just running for their life and it's like Mad Max around here, people are gonna be shooting deer with .22s.
Yeah.
But one of the things too on this debt issue, I'm pulling up the U.S. debt clock online here, and the debt per U.S. citizen is now at $58,865. So if every single
Give me that number again.
$58,865.
Okay. Now that doesn't include the liabilities for
Unfunded
things
liabilities.
like Social Security.
No.
Because I just today read on the internet that it's actually, if you include all that, every American is in debt by about $1 million.
$844,906.
Okay.
That is the liability per taxpayer. Now there are fewer taxpayers than there are citizens.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, about half of the American population don't pay taxes.
Yeah, right. Actually, it's 2/3. It looks like.
Yeah, that's what I heard. That it was almost $1 million
it's over $1 million
per taxpayer.
Yeah, if you include these U.S. unfunded liabilities using the GAAP accounting method. So here's another interesting statistic: the largest number of U.S. citizens in U.S. history to renounce their U.S. citizenship is right now. There are people jumping out of the United States.
Yeah.
Now, I forgot the exact number. Right?
Yeah.
It's like 4,000.
That's interesting because a few years ago there were many French citizens leaving France, and many of them went to Russia because for the low taxation. France taxation is, I don't know what it is, in the 80% of your income, and Russia is, I think, 13%. And so a lot of wealthy French people were moving to Russia. Now, I don't know where these people you're talking about leaving the United States are going,
I don't either.
but there's probably several places that have lower taxation than the United States.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, if you're one of the people in the United States that doesn't really pay any personal tax because your tax liability is low, you're not incentivized to move. But if you are very wealthy and you're getting drilled, and you think, man, I can live offshore in a yacht anchored in the Caribbean, and if I need some bananas or whatever, I can just get in my little boat and go in, get my bananas and leave. You know, that's not a bad life.
You know what's so funny? I've been watching the presidential debates, and some of the candidates are bringing this out, that we are driving wealth out of the United States by a high taxation. And there's so many people that just can't figure this out. They can't get it in there. They're listening to the Bernie Sanders or whatever and say, we got to tax the rich. Well, at some point the rich leave.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to get from them anymore.
Yeah, they've had enough. Here's another interesting statistics here on the USDebtClock.org website. 46,281,991 U.S. citizens living in poverty.
That's a bunch, isn't it?
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
What's the U.S. population? 322 million?
That sounds close
Yeah,
to
so
me.
we got 46 million in poverty of the 322 million people. That's really that's a lot of people in poverty.
Yeah. You know, as when I was talking about the Federal Reserve the other night at this group, I said, well, what are the threats? And we talked about a EMP.
Yeah.
And what was interesting to me, this group was really up on that.
Were they? Yeah.
They really knew a lot about EMP. And for those that don't know that, an EMP is an electromagnetic impulse that could be brought on by natural events through the sun or through an atomic blast purposely set off in the atmosphere. And many nations have the technology to do that. And what it does is it takes out electronic and electrical equipment so that it won't function. Picture a world where in 1 second, nothing electrical works. Now that would include all automotive equipment.
Yeah.
Okay, and cars don't run, tractors, farming equipment, trains, buses, trucks, the internet.
Power grids.
Everything's gone in 1 second. Click, it's gone. We're back into the 1700s in 1 second. And that's a very real possibility. Now, picture this. That happens over the United States, but it doesn't happen over other nations, so they have equipment that still works. How do we fight an invasion?
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to use whatever means we had.
Now, as far as I know,
We'd be blind technologically.
yeah, but guns still work, I think. I haven't heard that they wouldn't. They're not electrical.
Primer. Yeah, I don't know if the primer would mess up or anything like that.
As far as I know, guns would still work. Firearms would still work. But, modern warfare isn't based on pistols and rifles. It's electronic stuff.
Right. Yeah, right.
And so it would be, so I say, what are the threats? Well, one is economic, just an economic collapse. Another is the EMP, which would bring an economic collapse for sure.
Can I say a little bit about the EMP
Sure.
while you're putting your thoughts together on that? The North Koreans are, they're saber rattling all the time, and there's lots of fear and control, manipulation. There's some really, if it wasn't so sad, it'd be funny. These videos on YouTube about, the 10 lies that North Korean people believe. Kim Jong-un spoke from the crib. Kim Jong-un was a superhero. Basically, he's a playwright. He plays the piano. He plays all these instruments. He can do everything. He's like a Superman kind of guy. They believe all this stuff about this guy, or they're taught that that's true. So another thing too that I've heard about the North Korean nuclear program is that when they've measured the seismic activity of the North Korean alleged nuclear explosions that they do underground, they are big explosions, but they're not. They're small enough to be conventional.
It could be dynamite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not playing games with the North Koreans. I mean, I think they still are at war with us, and I think technically we are still at war with them. I think we signed some kind of armistice, but I don't know that we ever said, hey, let's quit fighting. We're still legally at war with the North Koreans. But what I've heard is that some people believe that, North Korea, I think recently has been launching some satellites. And the way I understand the EMP is that this nuclear explosion goes off above a country in elevation of a mile. And the electromagnetic pulse that's released from the nuclear detonation, like you said, it fries out everything electronic. Cars, gas pumps, power grids, computers, internet, anything with a wire basically catches on fire. It receives massive amounts of electricity and then fries out. So that's one scenario. And then the other scenario, I want to kind of let our listeners know, historically in 1859 there was an event called the Carrington event. Mm-hmm. And this was a powerful geomagnetic solar storm. And what it was from was a coronal mass ejection. The sun naturally has these massive explosions, like 1,000,000 times bigger than the size of
every
the Earth.
now and then, like every 1,000 years or so.
Well, I think they go on pretty regularly,
Okay.
but they don't actually point toward the Earth.
I see. Okay.
So you got these coronal mass ejections, and then boom, you got all this geomagnetic material and all this stuff that goes flying off into space. Well, it doesn't always hit the Earth. I mean, because just where we're perfectly pointed.
Yeah.
But there were reports at the time. I think the main piece of technology was the telegraph in 1859. And the telegraph operators, if your finger was on the button, you got shocked. Now, I don't know if it killed you, but they said the telegraph operators who were sending a telegraph would get shocked that the wires literally fell off the poles on fire, started forest fires all over the country, and that the aurora borealis, the northern lights, from the coronal mass ejection from the sun was visible all the way at the equator. Okay. So it was this major natural event. Now, I don't know if it would have taken out the whole planet or just the part of the planet that was facing the sun when it hits. I forgot it takes like 7 minutes or whatever for light to get from the sun to the Earth, at 186,000 whatever is miles per second. So this is all really fascinating. It's really interesting. It could amount to a whole lot of nothing. But again, under these possibilities, if you're financially able, I think you're wise to set back some resources in the event of, just even an earthquake. Like if the New Madrid Fault were to really rock and roll like it did back in the day, bridges collapse, rivers flow the opposite direction, lakes are created. You're isolated from the rest of the world for an amount of time. You might want to think about.
Well, let me ask you this: if you've got a house wired, does that house catch fire due to the wires?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Now that's a spooky scenario.
Yeah, every house catches on fire. Yeah. It's like too. They say if you got a wire laying outside, coil it up. If you coil it up, it'll catch less of the electric. I don't understand how that works. I'm not an electrician nor am I like a physicist when it comes to electricity. Yeah. I don't understand all that. But they say don't leave wires laying flat out because they'll catch more electricity. Like the power lines will just get wham. They'll just get hit because it just runs this really a long length. So I don't know. It's really kind of interesting, and it's also can be a little bit spooky. And think about I think it was the National Geographic Society. They did a mock-up, like a mock-up documentary, and I forgot the name of it. It was like something about the lights go off, but what it was based on was a cyber attack. Terrorists hack into the United States internet grid, get into the power grid, and adjust the electricity remotely to crank up. It was either watts or volts or something in Ohm's law, and it was frying out. It fried every single solitary transmitter, or not transmitter. What are those called?
Transformers.
Yeah, right. Fried every transformer in the country. So then they played out what would happen if this happened. And it didn't take very long for people to get really barbaric.
Yeah.
You had like 30,000 people trapped in elevators. And they couldn't move. They couldn't get out of those elevators.
Being in an elevator is not a good thing.
Not when the power goes out.
Yeah.
And so they had people climbing out, and then they'd get on the roof. It was all fictional. Yeah. But it kind of was one of those things, and they had a prepper family. and they had all their food hidden, and they had all this stuff, and they had guns, and they were gonna, they had a fence, and it was all the interpersonal relationships and how all this went. But the power finally comes back on, and the last scene was people were really getting ready to kill each other.
Now, how long is the time frame on this at the power?
I think it was like 21 days or something like that.
Oh, it was up for 21 days?
Yeah.
Think what it'd be like to be in New York City 21 days without power. There'd be a lot of people
3 months.
There'd be a lot of people very hungry and
I think
very
beyond,
thirsty.
I think beyond hungry.
Yeah,
I mean, they'd be dead.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to die.
yeah.
And like too, I think about like if it's everything goes down, if everything like from an EMP, there are no tractors, there's no wells to pump water for a rice field. All that's gone.
Yeah,
So you got to get out there with a pickaxe.
yeah.
I mean, if you're going to grow something.
Yeah, a hoe and a shovel.
Yeah. And then you've got to defend it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, someone sees you got corn growing in your front yard, and they're going to be like, I'm hungry too.
Yeah.
I think I'll help myself to some of that corn or whatever. So, I don't know. I'm not really a doom and gloom guy, but things could get dicey.
Yeah. I want to say something else because that's talking about these threats. I think one is just no EMP, but we can have financial disaster that could be far worse than the Great Depression.
I agree. I think, Germany's really struggling. The Deutsche Bank, how do you pronounce that? They're really struggling.
Well, Germany's the most stable, financially stable nation in Europe. If Germany's in trouble, they're all in trouble.
Got issues.
Yeah. Okay, and I want to bring out, and I know you don't want me to talk about this subject, but I think Islam is a problem. Okay? Let's just say their part of the world doesn't get taken out, and they still have armaments and military hardware, planes and whatnot. Yeah. What's going to keep them from invading us with technology that we don't have?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have it anymore.
We do have enemies.
Yeah, we have that. And I want to tell people think, oh, the Muslims, they're, backwards and, they could never take us on. Well, Christendom at the time of Muhammad, the Roman Empire was Christian. Okay? The Roman Empire, the strongest, most powerful empire the world ever knew. And these camel jockeys conquered 2/3 of the Roman Empire of Christendom. and people were saying, let's know, in 400 years, they conquered 2/3 of it in 400 years. If that can happen then, just think if they've got technology that's better than anything we've got after an EMP, we're in deep trouble.
That's really our edge militarily.
I think absolutely,
is technology.
Yeah.
So if it's just a man against man fight, well, gosh, we're
But if they have a technological advantage over us,
and numbers.
Now, and here's something else. I want to say something about this. I think it's in the. I can't think if it's Ezekiel or Jeremiah. I think it's Jeremiah. Jeremiah tells the people of Israel, he said, you've sinned. You deserve to go into exile. And Jeremiah said, go do it. It's going to happen. Go into exile. It's what you deserve. You've sinned. You brought it on yourselves. Go to Babylon.
And
prosper in Babylon.
That's Jeremiah.
Okay. That's Jeremiah. And actually that happened. They did prosper in Babylon. I talk a lot about Russia. Okay. Now, what are the major powers that if America had a total disaster could come in and take over America? We could talk about Russia, China, and the Arab world, right? And I don't know about China, okay? There's a funny thing about the Chinese psyche. They can be warlike. But the Chinese would rather work hard and take it over by buying it. It's just part of the Chinese psyche.
Yeah.
It's not part of the Russian psyche. Okay? Russia has always been a nation that expanded militarily. The Muslims have always expanded militarily. So I think those are the two groups. If America were to have a disaster that would be the most likely to come over here and try to take over. Now, I want to ask you this question. If you had a choice of being taken over by Russia, which is 70% Christian today, or Muslims that say, acknowledge that Muhammad is God and Allah his prophet, or I'm going to cut your head off, which one would you rather be under? And people wonder why I talk about Russia all the time. But I'm not so sure. I really believe because of our sin, and you know, we could outline that sin, violation of the Sabbath, things like that. I think our most egregious sin is something I hardly ever talk about, because I think if you don't see this as a sin, you're so stupid, there's no sense me communicating with you, and that's abortion. You know, it's a horrible, horrible sin that God hates. And the sin of abortion, American deserves punishment for. And I believe that unless, you know, God gives chances for repentance. God talks over and over again. It's not my desire to destroy the wicked.
Right.
My desire is the wicked would repent and turn. He says it. And that's not a New Testament concept.
No.
It's not. I mean, it's
included.
It's in the New Testament.
It's inclusive.
But it's an Old Testament concept.
Yeah.
God and God gives us chance after chance after chance to repent and turn back. Individually, He gives us those chances, doesn't He? And nationally, He gives us those chances. But He talks about the cup of the cup of the wrath of the wine of God being full.
The wine press.
Yeah, and once that cup is full, and I don't know where that cup is.
I don't either.
You know, but once that cup is full, it's poured out. It's a historical truism. I mean, it happens to, it just didn't happen to Israel. He said that about Babylon, about, you know, all the Assyrians. You know, at some point, the cup of God's wrath is full against those nations, and He pours it out. And I just believe that at some point, the cup of God's wrath will be poured out on America. And the reason I talk about Russia so much is, if we are in the choice of being invaded by Muslims or Russians, I'm going to pick the Russians. And I'm not so sure I wouldn't be supporting them coming in to take us over rather than us being taken over by the Muslims. Because we're not going to be able to take care of ourselves if that EMP or maybe that financial... Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think
It maybe sounds unpatriotic or something.
Yeah, I think it might make someone a little uncomfortable because they haven't made the mental leap to the reality that we are skyrocketing towards national judgment because of our sin as a nation. And I'm with you. I would, you know, no one really knows where the wrath of God begins and the grace and the mercies of God end for a nation. No one really, I mean, maybe the prophets know. You know,
I don't know.
Amos chapter 3, verse 7, I think it says something to the effect of the Lord speaking. He says through Amos, there's nothing that I don't do in the realm of the earth without first revealing it to my servants, the prophets. So there may be people that would be prophetic, that are tuned in what the Spirit of the Lord is saying specifically about times and dates and moments in time when things are going to move and shift. But, you know, the thing I was telling my daughter was, it's like, you know, if you think about abortion, and, you know, the majority of abortions are probably convenience abortions, you know, like unwanted pregnancy, I'm not ready to be a mom, I'm not ready to be a dad, I've got things I want to do, or I can't afford it, I can't afford the baby, so let's abort the baby. But if you really think about it, if there was no fornication and there was no adultery in America, none.
Yeah, there'd probably be no need for an abortion and no rape.
Yeah, there would be, that issue would become much, much less significant because people would properly prepare themselves and their lives to receive children. And they wouldn't be like, oh, what am I going to do? You know, it's embarrassing, and you know, or whatever is running through the minds of people. So, but when you look at the sheer volume of human life that's been snuffed out through abortion, it's staggering. And this is just in the United States, and I think we're getting close to I think it's the 80 million level. And when you think about 80 million, that's like 100,000 seat stadiums. That is like a lot of human life. I mean, it's catastrophic.
Yeah.
And for God to really get involved in the affairs of men when it came to Cain and Abel, where God says, hey, Cain, I hear something crying out from the ground. Where's your brother? Oh, I'm not my brother's keeper. I'm not my brother's keeper. I don't have to keep track of him. Yeah. Wait, I hear something crying out from the earth. It's innocent blood. One man was innocently killed in the Bible, and we've got 80 million innocent. How much more innocent do you get? Yeah. So I'm on the page that, and I'm not here to judge people. That's not my role. But I'm just here to point out the obvious reality that when a nation kills their own children on the altar of convenience, on the altar of Mammon, on the altar of Baal, on the altar of Molech. When we throw our own babies into the fire and expect God to just think it's okay and let that go.
When he was fairly clear that was not okay.
That's not okay. I'm not God, but it's not okay to me.
Yeah.
That's not okay. That's not okay. Now I realize, and there's this ideology that people are like dogs. They don't have any self-control. They're just going to do whatever they're going to do.
It's just the wrong ideology.
Well, they hand out condoms in schools. Yeah. They hand out birth control in schools. So here, don't tell your parents you can have this, take this, you won't get pregnant. And we know you're going to do this anyway. I don't really subscribe to that. I think there's this little thing called self-control, that people can control themselves. People don't have to do that. They can say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait until I'm married. Now, maybe I'm an idealistic fool. I don't think I am. I think I've got solid Bible to stand on.
You don't even, if the Bible didn't exist, you're still solid standing there. Just history and common sense show that to be true.
So I'm kind of like you in the sense that the cup of God's wrath is filling for our nation. And, if you look at Deuteronomy 28, it gives all the blessings. I think there are 14 verses that give blessings and 58 verses that give the curses. Yeah. And the curses are horrendous.
Yeah. And we're starting to experience those curses.
Yeah.
Just economically, one of the blessings is you will lend to others and never be a borrower. Yeah. And one of the curses is you will be a debtor. Well, at the end of World War II, the largest creditor nation in the world was the United States of America. Today, we are the largest debtor nation in the world.
Yeah, ever in human history.
Yeah.
I think it's Proverbs, I want to say it's 22:7. It says the rich rule over the poor and the borrower is slave to the lender. And that's what you probably brought out in your talk. Yeah. So we've enslaved ourselves. We're debt slaves, really, because of virtue of our citizenship in the United States. We owe debt, and the way I understand that too is like if
we don't even have to agree to be in debt, and we're in debt
the minute we're born.
Yeah.
The minute we're born in the United States, bang, we owe $58,000 to somebody.
Well, if you're a taxpayer under the figures we just looked at, you owe $1 million of the government's debt.
Well, what's the government? The government's like us.
Yeah.
Yeah, this debt clock is just ridiculous. 19 trillion, 12 billion, 511 million, and then you can't keep up with the thousands. It changes too fast. That's the national debt right now. But that doesn't include all the other unfunded liabilities.
Yeah, I wanted to say something else about this cup of the wrath of God. When God sent the children of Israel into the promised land, what did he tell them to do to the people that lived there? Did he say, bless them and help them out? He said, go in and I want you to kill every man, every woman, every child, and every animal. I would suggest to you that that's harsh.
Yeah.
That is harsh. But that's what he said. It's very clear. Now, did they do it? No, they didn't do it. They did
some of it. Yeah.
They did some of that, but they kept the animals and the pretty girls. You know, I mean, that's what they did. They disobeyed God. Now, why would God decree that kind of judgment on a whole civilization? Well, the Bible tells us why. They offered their children as sacrifices to Moloch. And God said, I'm not tolerating that. I'm just wipe them out.
Yeah, we're running out of time here, but I wanted to close with an idea. You know, I know a lot of us New Testament believers in Jesus can really wrestle with that.